I was born and reared about 400 yards out of Blacklion, up a side road. It's part of the Cavan Way now, just up the Cavan Way, and a little house on the edge of the lane. I was born and reared there and lived there all my life, and in the mid-70s we built a new house further down in the lane a bit, and apart from that I reckon I've only missed about 3 months at Blacklion all my life. A real Blacklion man. My father was widowed in 1949 when he was 11 months old, and he was left with 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I was the youngest, 11 months old, and I feel I was the lucky one in the family because I was too young to realise my mother was gone. So my memories of Blacklion was the people of Blacklion, they were decent, generous and honest. And I have to say that the people of Blacklion, when we were growing up and children, every house nearly in Blacklion was a second home to us. I have to say the people of Blacklion in those days were wonderful, because no one had a lot, but yet everyone shared. I got my first communion in Belcoo. I got my confirmation in the same day as in Arney, out the parish chapel is out in Arney in County Fermanagh. And we had confessions every first Friday in the local hall in Belcoo. There was no little church in Belcoo that time. And you went to communion then on the first Saturday. We didn't go to communion in our local chapel because Mass was at 10 o'clock. You had the fast from 12 o'clock, midnight, and it was too, my father felt it was too much of a bore, trouble for us to do that. But anyway, coming back from Belcoo, there was an old woman and her husband lived on the Belcoo Road. The 3 little houses are still there. Maureen Green lives in the little house now I'm talking about in particular, and there were Farlows, Willie Farlow and his wife, Mrs. Farlow. We always called Willie Farlow Willie because he used to help me father on the farm, but Mrs. Farlow was always called Mrs. Farlow. And we were always told when we were children to address the older generation as Mr., Mrs. or Miss. The Greens were very friendly with the Greens. We never spoke to the Greens by their Christian names. We spoke to them as Miss Green or Mr. Green. So that old woman or lady would have 3 mugs of tea, and I can still see the thick arrowroot biscuits that came that time in oval shape. So I'm talking of now maybe 56 or 57 years ago. I can still see the old lady in the kitchen with the old modern mistress range and the 3 mugs of tea waiting for us to come in for the tea and the biscuits. And that woman was a Protestant woman and we were Catholic, so it shows you that the harmony the people in Blacklion lived in those days.
I grew up at Rushing. I was born in 1927, so that marks me 85 years. I've lived in Belcoo area all my life. I could say I remember the Depression, although at the time we didn't know what that big word was of the 1930s. And I remember my father bringing the milk, selling milk to the creamery. And that would only, the cheque would only come at the end of the month. And in order to get some money in between, we sold milk out at Holywell to a family there. And this, it all sticks in my mind about the poverty. I remember delivering the milk and coming back in the avenue, and Daddy got off the cart and he said, "Did you get the money, Maria?" And I said, "No, I didn't." Well, I could see the change in his face, you know. I'll never forget that. And big droves of cattle going out to the fair to be sold and coming back again. And every family was the same. There was nobody any different. We all had our wee jobs to do. It was called scuddling around the yard. That was bringing in the turf and the water from the river and feeding the calves and the hens and the ducks, and make sure the hens were closed at night, because if they were out in the morning there was a battle cry, "Who was supposed to close the hens last night?" And the ducks might go away in the loch. You see, we were beside the lake there, and that would be a terrible. Another thing was looking for a hen was suspected of laying out, and you would have been sent battering down all the ditches and briars and nettles to look for this hen, and the legs would be stung off you. No hen at all. But maybe in 3 or 4 weeks after, 3 weeks to be correct, she would proudly arrive with a hen, with herself and a flock of chickens on the yard.
When we were going to Carnegie School, we got the bus at a Blacklion. So we walked home in the evenings. The best part of the school was coming home in the evenings. There was a gang of us together, and it was great in the autumn because there was two good orchards who were passing by. It was better fun trying to get apples out of it and not getting caught and eating the apples. So one of the orchards was easy rated, the other one was hard rated, and the people that owned them was very cross. But we made a wee hole in the hedge from the back side, and we could get in the wee hole in the hedge, and a couple of us would do watching. And we'd cough if we seen anybody coming. So we're home with a few apples, but the enjoyment was not getting caught. In those days, it was harmless fun. Everybody enjoyed themselves. There was very, very few people were drunk because there was no money. And we were happy simply because everybody was in the one boat. There was nobody with a big pocket of money. Anyone had a sixpence was rich. Anyone had a threepence was made up, and anyone had a penny or twopence for a penny bar, they were lucky. And that's the way it was. And we were all the same. And there's none of us any different.